There we go. All right. So external references. The first thing I want to say about external references is that you will be using these on your final, and they're going to be a big portion of your final, right? And I say that not that they're terrible to work with, but they're really, it's an organizational system for your drawing files, right? So for our final project, you'll be drawing a floor plan, a couple elevations, an enlarged floor plan, a site plan, and you're going to combine them all using external references, right? And the reason that we like to use these for your final project, for the organization of your files, is because professionally you'll use these all the time for that, right? When I worked in firms that were still exclusively AutoCAD, at all of the firms I worked at, this was the system that they used to organize their files, okay? So I want to talk about why this system is going to be very helpful, okay? We'll have some graphics here, right? So I want to talk about the idea behind what we're going to call a base file, or the xref, and I'll use the term xref. It's just an abbreviation for external reference, okay? So xref, and I want to talk about the idea of a sheet file, okay? And we'll just do a little graphic here of something, right? Here's a floor plan. There's one door. There's another door, there's a third door, right? And we've got all of our walls and etc. in between. Maybe this is another area with the door. Those are doors too, right? And so that'll be a base file, okay? A base file is going to be considered an xref, and a base file is going to be somewhat of a template file, right? It's going to be a template file that contains an architectural shell that you'll be using for other drawings. Okay, so I'll say that for now. A sheet file is going to be something like this, where you have a title block. It's in paper space, right? And the way that this system works is we're going to take base files and we're going to xref them into sheet files. Okay, so a sheet looks like this, and it has that same thing like this, goes like that. I made a weird whoop, like that, right? You'll have a title on it. It'll look something like that, right? And you'll have some general notes over here, right? Okay. Once I show you how the system works in AutoCAD, it's going to appear very easy, right? But the explanation behind it is complex. So I'll just get going with the explanation, knowing that you don't know how to do it in AutoCAD yet, and then when we do it in AutoCAD, you'll say, oh, I get it, right? It's really easy, actually, okay? So the idea behind external references is that you have a lot of different sheets in a set of construction drawings, right? You have things like floor plan, dimension floor plan, finished floor plan, reflected ceiling plan, a lot of different sheet files, right, where you show different things. So the dimension plan shows, you know, the outline of the building, right, but it just shows dimensions on the building. And the finished floor plan shows the outline of the building, but it just shows the finishes on the floor, right? And the reflected ceiling plan shows the outline of the building, but it shows all of the lighting and ceiling and equipment on the ceiling, right, as opposed to the finished floor plan, okay? All of these different sheets, like reflected ceiling plan, finished floor plan, dimension plan, code plan, whatever you're doing, right? Those are all sheets. So if it has a sheet file, it's going to have the designation, like for an architectural drawing, you know, AE, I should have put an E, I'm being lazy, 101, or AE 102, etc. Okay? There will be a designator showing AE is an architectural designation, and then there's a numbering system for the sheets, right? 101, 102, 103, 104, those are floor plans. You know, the 200 series are elevations. The 300 series are going to be sections. The 400 series will be enlarged plans, right? And it goes on and on and on. So sheet files, they show the architectural outline, but you do different types of work in a sheet, okay? Does that somewhat make sense? Maybe. Everybody's like, no. Okay. In a base file, we have the basic architectural outline, right? So the base file, the idea is that you draw the floor plan, and then you xref it into a sheet file and you do sheet-specific work. essentially, right? The reflected ceiling plan, the finished floor plan, the dimension plan, all of those use that same basic outline of architecture, but one shows ceiling, another one shows floor, and the other one has dimensions, right? But the thing they have in common is that architectural template. They all have to have that same outline, right, of a building to then do different types of work on, sheet-specific work, okay? So the base file is going to show the basic outline of the architecture, and it's going to be somewhat generic. It's just going to show the architecture. And the sheet files will be specific, right? This information will be displayed here, and then you'll add the sheet-specific work, okay? The way that this system works is base files are going to be called things like x dash floor plan, right? X dash elevation, x dash section, right? Or even, you know, x dash floor plan 01 or 00 for the basement, right? So these are going to be the base files, right? The basic architectural templates. Those will have an X in front of them, okay? There will be a dash or whatever, or a similar naming system, okay? In this case, they're called xref dash floor plan, xref dash site, or whatever, okay? Your sheet files, however, will have this architectural designation, and then they'll have a number behind them. So AE10, let's see, AE101, or AE102, or AE103, or AE201. Okay. Okay. The reason that we somewhat name these things differently so we can tell them apart, number one, right? So the base files are what we're going to call the xrefs, have the X in front of them, and they're the template, or the template information. And the sheet files have AE in front of them, and they're numbered, and we can tell the difference between the two. Okay. The other reason we like to name these different but, you know, similar in their own categories so that when they are in your file structure, they sort together, right? So when you're looking at a folder with all of these files in it, right, these are all grouped together because they start with X and they're at the bottom of your file structure, right? And these all group together because they have AE in front of them, okay? So it's two-part, to differentiate them, but then to also group them together within your file structure, okay? All right, so the way that this system works, and I'm just going to say it one more time and then I want to show you how to use it in AutoCAD, is that we take this base file and we xref it into our sheet file, okay? So the workflow is going to be, number one, we have to create our sheet file, okay? And then number two, we have to xref our base into our sheet file. And then number three, we need to do our sheet specific work, okay? And then number four, we're going to print from our sheet. Okay, so that's kind of how the workflow is. Now I'm going to show you this, well, let me say something else first before I get going on this. Let me tell you why we're going to do this system, and then I'll show you how it functions, okay? The idea behind this system is that we create a base file of floor plan 01, okay? We xref it into AE101, right? Maybe we xref it into AE102, we xref it into AE103, and nope, we don't do it into 201. We take our elevation though, we xref it into here. And we take the same elevation, we xref it into AE202, okay? The reason that we use this system is because you get a lot of these sheets in a set of architectural drawings, right? You can have 400 sheets, right, in a set of architectural drawings. And the way the system works is it allows us to create these base files where if I open up this floor plan and I change it and I close it and I save it, anywhere that it's xref'd, that change will be updated in that file. Okay, so what this essentially does is it allows us to make the change in one place and have it reflected in any place where it's xref'd, okay? And that makes sense because if I have 400 sheets that all use this floor plan in it, right? If I didn't have this system where I change one file and it updates, then I'd have to open, make a change, close and save. Open, make a change, close and save, right? You get the idea. Do that 400 times and hope that you, number one, didn't skip a file, number two, didn't make an error in the change, right? Or something else, okay? So the idea is that you create one architectural template, right? We save it, we xref it into these sheets, we do our sheet specific work, and if we make a change to this base file, it updates wherever it's linked, wherever it's xref'd into. Okay, so it really helps in that sense. The other really nice thing about this system is that base files, they're xref'd into sheet files. I'm going to use the word they're attached to a sheet file, okay? And that's pretty important. xrefs are attached to a sheet file as opposed to being inserted, okay? Blocks are inserted into drawing files and xrefs are attached. And the difference is when I insert a block into a file, it brings everything with it. So all of its layers come in, all of its, any type of associations that that block has, they are inserted into a file. It could be a virus, right? It could be some weird thing that makes your drawing continue to crash. But when you insert one thing into another thing, it comes in wholly, right? All of its junk, all of its good information, and it becomes part of the drawing it's inserted into, okay? Which inherently makes the file larger, right? So what the difference between attached and inserted is that these base files, these xrefs, are essentially, they're kind of like paper clipped to the back of the sheet file, right? So we can view them and we can look at them, but they're not wholly contained within that sheet file, right? And I'll show you what that looks like on the screen as well, okay? And the idea is that we can use these as a template to draw over the top of. We can snap to them, we can move them and rotate them and do minor things to them, right? But the idea is that we are viewing these within the sheet file, right, so that we can use them, but then they maintain their own integrity and they're separate from the sheet file. So, you know, the file structure, or the files stay small in size, there's less of a chance of getting, you know, maybe a virus from one of them, and then all of the layers and all those different things remain separate, okay? It sounds really complicated. In actuality, the system is really easy to use, so I'll do it and you'll say, oh, it's really easy, right? But the idea behind it is actually quite complicated, okay? So when you're working in a large office, right, you're working in a big architecture firm or an engineering firm, do you use these at AGEC, probably?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I bet you do. I'm pretty sure you do, yeah. I'm trying to remember if I've gotten a file from, it's been a long time since I've gotten files from you guys. Oh, and I've just lost my train of thought. What was I gonna say? Anyway, maybe it'll come back to me. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Okay, so in a large firm, you work in a big architecture firm, right? The system is you have all of these base files. So you take your architectural project and you divide it up, right? And you draw all the floor plans in separate files, all the elevations in separate files, the sections in separate files, okay? So you could have upwards of 10 or 15 different base files, right? And the way in a big firm that it works is that you take those and, you know, one by one, you save them into different sheets, right? And all the sheets are separate, okay? So this is kind of the workflow of a larger firm. When you're in a smaller firm or doing maybe more residential type work, the system is a little bit simplified. I'm just gonna, we'll portion a little area off over here, okay? So this is kind of like the big firm workflow. When you're working in a smaller firm, the way that it works is that you have a file. We'll call this our master file, okay? You have all these base files out here, X plan, X elevation, X section, X interior elevation, right? And you take all of these and you bring them into one master file. So instead of taking these and just putting them into individual files, right? And this is how we're going to do it on our final project. We're going to draw all of these drawings separately, and then we're going to xref them into one master file. Okay, so in this one master file, you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 drawings that are going to be xref'd into one master file. And the idea behind that is that in a small firm, it makes sense that you could maybe do you know, a couple of different tasks in one file because it's a fairly small project and it doesn't get too complicated, right? So you can bring everything in here and then sort it using layouts, right? Like this gets printed here, and this one gets printed here, and this one gets printed here, and that one gets printed there on tabs, right? This works well on a small scale project, which we have. It doesn't work very well on a large scale project because you could have, you know, 100 different tabs in one drawing, and that just doesn't really work very well, okay? All right, so with that said, our big long explanation, right? And in fact, I like to take a picture of this because if anybody's not here, then I can post it and you can see it. Right? Okay. Okay. Here we go. Let's actually express some drawings together. Okay. Now, I'm gonna show you the process because there's still some more explanation that needs to go on with this process. Okay. But I want to show you exactly what it means to xref some drawings together. Okay. So let me just do it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. And I just want you to note that my base files, I have a folder here on my desktop called xref, and in that folder I have these 3 different base files. Okay, so I just want you to kind of notice that. Let's go back to AutoCAD. I'm going to open up a blank file, click, and you would use your template file to start this that has all of your nice, wonderful settings in it. Okay. We're going to use, and I need to change a few of these things because, let me just make sure. Okay. So far so good. Oh, I'm going to turn off. Okay, that's off. All right, so I opened up a blank file. I'm going to create my sheet first because I already have my base files generated, right? And I'm just going to, in fact, let me do this on this while I have my screen split here. There we go. I opened up a blank drawing. I have my base files already generated. Those are drawn in individual AutoCAD files. I need to create a sheet file. To create a sheet file, I'm going to File, Save As, and here I'm going to give this drawing a new name. We'll call it AE101. Save. By doing what I just did, I just created a sheet file, opening up a drawing. And in this case, I did a blank file because I don't have a template established here, but you should have a template established, even if it's fairly generic, right? You started it at the beginning of the semester. But I would open up my template file, File, Save As, give it this name, and I just created a sheet. Okay. Now, this sheet is blank. There's nothing in my model space, right? And I don't have, because I don't have a template established, I don't have my model space laid out, or my paper space laid out either. Okay. The way that I'm going to xref these files or attach these files to my sheet file, I'm going to use the external reference command. XR enter. When I type XR enter, this external reference tool palette pops up. Okay. Now I've got an attach button. I have a refresh button. Those are the 2 I'm going to worry about now. And you'll notice that I have my file references area. This shows me that I have AE101 open, right? Doesn't show anything else in here. To attach a drawing file, I'm going to click on Attach, use the little drop down, choose Attach Drawing. I'm going to go and find where these files are located because I want to attach this base file. I'm going to xref it into my sheet file. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go to my xref folder. I'm going to choose Site Plan, hit Open. I'm going to hit OK for now. Okay. And we do see that something happened. I do see that I have, it says down here, Attach xref. Okay, well, it's been loaded, so that looks like it has worked, right? And then it says, hey, that's where the file was located on the C, Users, SBrady 14, Desktop, xref Site Plan. Okay, so that's the path to where my base file was located, right? And I also see up here that under my external reference, my tool palette over here, that underneath my open file, I have a loaded xref Site Plan file, right? So even though I don't see anything on the screen, I do see that, you know, I'm thinking I was successful, okay? And you know, we were. The reason I don't see anything is just because I'm zoomed out too far or zoomed in too far, one of the two, okay? So I'm gonna, just one second. Let me get through this whole process. So I'm going to zoom extents. Click, click, zoom extents, and there is my xref, okay? I'm gonna make a quick change here. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, where's the setting? Hold on. There we go. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But essentially, I was successful in adding my xref to this file, right? I see it there. Xrefs, it's not confusing, but you know, it's a little bit like you look at these and you think, this looks very much like a block, right? So when I xref something into another file, if I click on that xref, right, it all is glued together in one piece. It has one grip, okay? I can't really edit it very much, meaning I can't add things to it from here right now, okay? I can use it for reference though. If I wanted to create a new layer, right, I'm going to click on a couple new layers and I'll make this one, you know, gray. Click, click. Okay. I can do L for line and I can snap to it. You can see my objects are snapping, right? I can grab it and I can M for move and I can move it. Okay. RO, rotate it. I can rotate it. I can copy it. Okay. So I can do a lot of modification, meaning moving, rotating, copying, doing that kind of stuff, but I can't, you know, alter it. It does function like a block in that manner, right? It is a separate file. Okay. But the idea now is that, and if you look here, this xref is paper clipped to the sheet file that I just created. So this file that's called xref site plan is paper clipped to this file that, I don't think I've saved it maybe. Oh, AE101, I have saved it, AE101, okay? And I can use it for reference, right? And the idea is that I can take this and I can xref it into as many sheet files as I need, and I can use it over and over and over again. And if I change the original file, it updates in all of the sheet files, right? Now, another thing I want to kind of bring up, right? Xrefs are really great because I can use one file and I can attach it to multiple sheets, and if I make a change, it updates in all those sheets. Great. Another really great thing about these is that they are attached to files. They are not inserted, okay? So they somewhat remain separate. So that helps with file size, it helps with file organization, all that good stuff. With being just attached, right, instead of inserted, the layers for the original file, they maintain their independence, right? So here, you'll notice that I have some layers in the layer dialog box that are grayed out. They have a prefix on them, xref site plan, okay, and then they have a little divider line and then the name of the actual layer. So even the layers are somewhat kept separate from, you know, from the original file to the xref, right? And that is so that you can draw new objects, right, in this sheet file, and you can tell the difference between xref layers and new layers in the drawing. Okay. What is nice about this as well is that I can change the visibility of these. So I can come in here and I can, you know, hide those, right, freeze and thaw them, and they visibly turn on and off in my viewing screen here. Okay. Okay. Did you have a question?
Because when I attached the xref file, it was kind of asking if you wanted to x-axis or the y-axis.
Oh, okay. We'll go back over those settings. Yep, we will go over those. Okay. One kind of oddity, it's not really an oddity, it's just something you have to pay attention to, but one thing that really does affect external references is the layer that they're attached to the drawing on. So if I click on this xref and I go to home, I see that it's on layer 0, and that's great, right? The xref won't take on the properties of the layer it's inserted on. And I'm saying insert, and I know it's attached on, but attached on sounds kind of not right. But when you bring the xref in, it's dropped onto a layer. The xref does maintain its integrity, so it maintains its own file structure, it maintains its own pen settings, right? All that good stuff, except when it comes to the plot visibility in the current file. Okay, so if I bring this xref into my sheet file and I've dropped it on a layer that's called, you know, viewport, which this will happen to everybody, right? Not right, but it will. I dropped it on viewport and I know that I've made viewport non-printable, right? So if I go to print this, we'll just do a quick PDF. Letter size, where is it? There it is. Okay. And I preview that. It's not there, right? The xref is very clearly there. I can see it on the screen. I look over here at my xref tool palette and it's there, right? So I would say there are two things that beginning students have trouble with regard to xrefs, right? Number one, they attach their xref and they don't see it and they panic. Oh my gosh, where is my xref, right? Well, it's there. It's just you need to zoom in or out to find it, okay? So step number one, if you see your drawing attached here, it's in here, okay? Number one. The second thing, so zoom out. The second thing that I always see as a mistake is you drop it on the viewport layer, right? So I drop my file in, viewport is the current layer, or some other non-printable layer is the current layer, and you have 6 different drawings in here, and none of them print, right? You've done all this work, they look great, they're all lined up the way you want them to be, and then you put them in paper space, right? You get your drawing set up, and it doesn't work, okay? I would say the number one reason for that is it's on a non-printable layer, okay? So when you're using xrefs, you're going to want to watch those couple things, okay? So I've xrefed this in. That's really all there is to xrefing. That's it, that process, right? There's a lot to know about them, but this is really the process. I can xref more than one thing into the same file. So I can come back over here to xref. I can click on attach drawing. I can click on trees, open, okay. And I can click and drop my trees in there, okay? And I click on my trees, that's one xref, escape, escape. I click on my site plan, there is my second file, okay? I can click on trees, M for move, and I can move them about, right? I can hit undo, I can put them on a different layer than the site plan, right? But the idea is that you can have one, you can have two, you can have as many as you need, okay? All right. We have these files that have been attached to our drawing, okay? Which means they've been paper clipped, which means that they're easy to attach, but they're also easy to remove if you don't want them anymore. And this is kind of the, I guess, the niceness about an xref, right? If you take something and you insert it as a block, everything that you insert with that block comes with it, even if you delete that block. If you delete it, you don't want to see it. All the layers for that block are still there, all of the settings, any sort of weirdness that came along with it, right? Any virus is all going to still remain in your AutoCAD file, okay? When I want to get rid of an xref, I can come over, click on it, right click, detach, and it goes away, okay? And I know it's gone away because I can go into layer properties and all of its layers are gone, right? So I paper clipped it, I take the paper clip off, and it goes away. And nothing of that xref remains in this drawing. It takes everything with it because it was never really kind of part of the drawing, okay? I can click on this one, I can right click, and I can hit detach and that goes away as well. I'm gonna hit undo and bring those two back. I can detach and they go away forever. I can right click and I can hit unload and it just unloads it so I'm not viewing it. It's somewhat like freeze and thaw, but it's a little bit more serious than that, okay? I can do the same thing with trees, right click and unload. But when I want it back, I can right click and I can reload. Right click, reload. Okay, so I can bring them back and forth. So if you are working with a client and they have 3 or 4 different floor plans that they are looking at, right? You could say, well, if you want to use this one, here's what it's going to look like. Load and unload, right? You can kind of switch between them like design options very easily using this system. Okay. All right. Now this wonderful system is not without its quirks. Okay. XREFs are very literally the bane of my existence. In that, not in their usage because they're actually really easy to use and I like the system inherently, but when you work with other people, right, which is kind of the purpose of this system, it gets a little bit weird because people move things, they delete things, they rename things, right? And all of those things are like poison to XREFs, essentially, okay? So if I come over here and somebody thinks it's a great idea to rename this file, you know, xref R, enter. Okay. And I close out of my file here. I'm going to save it. And I'm going to reopen it real quick. AE101. Oh, geez, it actually worked. Oh, I didn't. You're right. I was like, why? Somebody's awake. See, I was just testing you guys, right? Let's just do, oops. Well, instead of calling this site plan, we'll call it site. Because I think that's a much better name, okay? And so I close out of this, I reopen it. Let's open it. There we go. And my site plan's missing. And I get an error and it says, hey, one or more of your referenced files cannot be located or read, right? And the reason behind this is that these files are, they are being pathed from this location to here. So AutoCAD is maintaining continual communication between itself and that file to read what it looks like, right? So if you rename that file, or you move it, or you delete it, or do something with it, and AutoCAD can't find it in that same location with the same exact name, then it won't display that information on the screen, right? So you get an error and it says it's unlinked, link is unreferenced, you get a lot of errors like that essentially, okay? It's pretty easily remedied. You can put the file back, you can put it back with the same name, or you can restore it, from deletion to its original location, essentially. So if I come back here and I click on site and I rename it plan, okay, and I hit, I close out of this because I realized what happened, right? I hadn't done anything to the xref, but now AutoCAD can find it, right? So if you ever go in and all of your xrefs are not there, you get an error that says one of your reference files cannot be found, right? It's because either the original file's been moved, it's been renamed, it's been deleted, something has happened to that original file, okay? I use this story every semester because I still can't believe it happened. But my husband's, the office he worked at before, he's at Method now, but when he was working at his former office, they had an office manager that decided she didn't like the name of the server. And so she renamed their server. It was like something like H drive, and she wanted it to be the S drive. So she renamed it S drive, Pollard Architects or whatever. And every xref for 30 years detached in all of their drawings. Immediately everybody started. It was the biggest nightmare ever. And it happens instantaneous. The second it happened, everybody just like started standing up like, is the network out? Like, did something happen? My xrefs aren't working, It was the scandal of the year, apparently. Which we all will understand, right?
So is the only way to fix that problem going in, renaming it exactly what it was? Like there isn't like a way, because what if they needed that specific name or whatever?
They wanted to change it, right? You would have to go back and reroute everything, yeah. And it's not...
So would that just delete the xref you have in there and reload with one of the new names and everything?
What you would want to do is you would want to right click and choose you can choose reload, and if that doesn't work, because sometimes AutoCAD at times is smart enough to know that, well, maybe this little portion got, missed. I'm going to go and try and find the name of that file, even though the file path has changed. But I'm going to look for that specific file, right? So sometimes it's smart enough to be able to find that file, even if the path to it has changed a little bit, okay? But if that doesn't happen, you essentially have to reattach it. You have to hit attach again, go find it with the new path and reattach it, right? Which sounds like a really easy task, but servers at companies are not always very organized, right? That's exactly it. It's like, here, but what version of it? Is it version, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013? And anyway, did somebody have it on their personal computer, or, did whatever? It's just a big nightmare. So happily Revit doesn't have xrefs. Revit has its own issues, of course, right? But I think I'm so tired of the problems with xrefs that like Revit is a welcome relief, but I'll soon enough get so tired of its problems that I'll wish I had my xref problems back, right? It's I'm making it sound worse than it is. It's generally a good system and it functions very well, right? But it does have its inherent problems. especially when we're working in this environment where you are going from here to home, to work, to home, to school, you know, and you're carrying your files on zip drives and you're working on this computer and that computer and moving around. This system specifically is very sensitive to that, right? So I guess it's good practice. You'll get used to learning how to reattach your xrefs, right? But just know that is what we have some things we can do to help with it, but it's kind of a problem.
So if you have it on like your zip disk or
Right.
your zip drive,
Right.
and you plug it into like, say you plug it into one, it's the H drive, and you plug it into a different one on a different computer, and
Right.
it's the F or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is that gonna?
You can,
That's so annoying.
It is annoying, yeah. I mean, the system works, it's meant to be in an office, right? Where you have one server, you're stationary, and people are connecting to that server to work. Yeah. And I say generally because sometimes it works okay, sometimes, and then other times it doesn't for whatever reason, right? There's something we can do to help it, and I'll show you how to do that. But the system, it does really work very well, right? What's nice about this system is that, you know, if you have these sheets where I've got one person working on the floor plan, one person working on the dimension plan, another person working on the finished floor plan, right? What's nice about the system is I can have multiple people working in different files, but accessing the same floor plan information, right? Because that floor plan is connected to all those different files, and they're all able to view it, but they can't really change or alter it. Right? And what's nice about that is if I change the original file, right? For example, if I open up trees, actually, hold on, I have to do something. I have to do something first. These are read-only, so I have to change them very quickly here. You guys might have the same problem because I can't save them when they're not when they're read-only. That's because they were on our server here. Another issue, right? But what's nice about that is if I have a lot of people working in these sheet files, you know, being able to view that floor plan, and I go on to a meeting and I meet with the client and they say, hey, that's great. Can you add 5 more trees? I'm like, yeah, sure, we can add 5 more trees, right? That's information that other people in the office need to know and be able to work around, right? So what's nice about this system is I can open up trees, right? You're managing your project. I can copy a few of them around, right? We'll add a few here. This little guy would be detrimental if they wanted one right in the center, so we all need to know about that, right? I could say, okay, that looks great, close out of it, save it. And immediately everyone who is working on a file that is attached to that file that I changed, they get a notification that says, hey, trees has changed. Would you like to see the current version? And you'll click on load and the changes are updated, okay? So that system is really nice so that people aren't working on old information, continuing to work and cost the project essentially, right? So xrefs are attached, they're not inserted. Xrefs, they use a template system where when you can essentially have one template file that if you make changes to it, updates in whatever sheet file it's attached to, right? All of the information from sheet file to xref maintains its independence, right? So all of the layers and settings of the xref, they are independent of the file you attach them to, right? And the best feature of this is that if you have a floor plan or some file that's updated and you make changes, you hit save, everyone else who's working in a sheet file with that information gets the updated copy, okay? So that's kind of the nice thing about xrefs. But the path, it's gotten a lot better since, we'll say the old days of AutoCAD. The pathing has gotten a lot better, you know, in the newer versions. But I swear I spent so much time repathing xrefs, making sure they worked, you know. And we joke because we had a guy that we worked with at AJC, and he could just mess up xrefs like nobody's business. Ugh, it was a nightmare. Anyway, I think he must have had something on his computer that very literally infected everything, because he would work on a file and you'd immediately get this error that was the undefined block number 1, and you always knew he'd worked on the file because you'd start getting this error, undefined block number 1, and it was an xref error. Anyway, the good old days, right? All right, so let's do this one more time. I want to run through how to xref things all together, okay? And you'll have and you'll have an assignment where you'll xref a few drawings together, right, to understand the system. I'm going to close out, and I'm not going to save. And in fact, I'm going to delete this sheet file so that we can create it all together. And I'll rename, oops, let me close that. I'm going to rename this roof. Okay. And I'm going to take, do you guys mind if I take a quick break? I feel like I need to get a coffee break, 5 minutes. I'll be right back. Okay. Any questions so far?
I think I have, but it's not for this xref thing. It's probably.
It's for what? Sorry.
It's not from this xref thing. It's from the furniture thing.
Oh, okay. We'll come back to that then.
Yeah.
Let's come back to that. Okay. All right. So let's xref an assignment together then, okay? Because you'll have an assignment to do this, and the assignment will essentially be to xref the files together. It won't be to draw them, right? So let's do that. So you're going to create a sheet, and you're going to do this for your final project as well. And I think this is like kind of a stumbling block for a lot of students. But it's actually probably the easiest step, right? So number one, where do we start? We create a sheet that we will then xref all of our files into, okay? So to create a sheet, if you don't have your template file going, you can just open up a blank AutoCAD file, okay? And to create a sheet, I'm gonna go to File, Save As, give it a name, AE101, Save. I just created my sheet. That's really all you have to do, okay? Now, ideally, if this were your template file, that sheet would have layers in it. It would have your pages already set up, right? It would have your units already set. You'd have dimension styles and all that good stuff in there. And if you don't, that's okay too. You just have a little more work to do to get going on your projects. But that is really how you create a sheet, okay? So in my case now, I have to change my units to architectural. There we go, everything looks good. All right, sheet is generated. Now it's time for me to xref my files together in this sheet. So I type XR, enter, and this external references dialog box pops up, okay? To attach a file, I'm gonna click on this down arrow and click on attach drawing. I'm gonna browse to wherever these are located, right? So desktop, xref, and we've got trees, site plan, roof. Okay, I'm gonna do the site plan first. Open. Okay, now here's one thing we haven't talked about yet. What settings do we designate on the attach dialog box? Okay, so I'm gonna leave this blank, so I don't wanna check there. I'm gonna leave this blank, okay? I am going to leave this blank unless I need to rotate it. I wanna make sure this says attachment. And finally, where it says path type, we have 3 different types of path. We have no path, a relative path, and a full path, okay? No path somewhat helps with if your drawing, you know, gets moved, right? So no path tells AutoCAD, just look for the file name, right? Doesn't matter where it's at on your computer, just look for the file name. And if you can find it, great, right? Relative path means there's a little bit of path. Maybe you can move it around in a folder, right? But AutoCAD generally knows that it's on this computer, it's on this server, it's in this area, and then it may move around kind of locally, okay? And then full path means it's on this computer in this physical lab at SLCC, and you need to know every single step to find that exact xref. Okay, so from it's in this building, in this lab, on this network, to this specific computer with my username, right? That's a full path. Okay, so there's different levels of being able to retrieve this file. Okay, now because you're probably moving around, doing your assignments everywhere, having them on your zip drive, coming here, going home, right? We're going to choose no path. Okay, I'm going to hit OK. And again, not a whole lot happened, right? But I'm gonna click, zoom extents out, and my drawing comes out to full extent. Great. Now there's a setting, you know, my lines look very bright, okay? And yours probably look very dim. And there's a setting that you can change to manage that. And I know, hold on, let me 1 second, let me, it's right here. I was like, I know there's a button. There isn't a button here. So if I click on my xref, and in fact, maybe I don't even have to click on my xref. If I go to insert over here to reference and drop down this menu, there's this xref fading area. Ooh, it's stuck. Huh, that's weird. Well, let's go the other direction. I must have. So let's type options. If you can't get it to work there, which I'm gonna have to troubleshoot, and I don't want to troubleshoot right now, this xref fade control under display, that will allow you to change the brightness of your xref, right? So if the more positive number it is, the less you see it, we'll say that. And the more negative it is, the brighter it is. Okay, so there's 2 different schools of thought on this, right? So if something's xref'd in, a lot of people like a visual cue that it's been xref'd, right? So, you know, it's faded a little bit so that when you draw over the top of it, you can tell between the xref and your new lines, right? It doesn't change the way it prints. So your question may be, well, if it's faded to a 50% opacity, then does it print half, you know, a very light pen weight? And the answer is no. It will still print the full pen weight, okay?
Mine looks different than yours.
How does yours look different?
It's dotted.
It's dotted. Oh yeah, yours is okay. That's an LT scale thing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, guys. Oh, that's okay. Sorry, Conte. She asked me a question on the way out and I forgot to answer it. Busy day, busy day. Okay. So Emma's looks a little different, right? Her lines here look dashed for this easement or this setback, and it's because your LT scale is different than mine. LT scale, maybe I'll type mine in as 80, and mine dashes, right? So it's an LT scale issue there as to why hers looked dashed and mine didn't. Okay. So I have the site plan xref'd in here. Let's xref in the other files. Okay, well I'm going to click on I'm going to stay in here. I'm going to go to my xref dialog box, click on attach, click on trees, open, attachment, blank, blank. We want this to be no path. Okay. Great. Okay, so my trees have xref'd in, my site plan's xref'd in. Okay. Now the final thing we want to xref in is our roof. Our roof actually has an angle to it. So when I look at it on my assignment, let me look at it. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, so it's actually angled, right? So we're going to have to enter an angle for it, and I think we get the angle here. Well, if we don't, we'll change it. But let me show you what I'm doing here. One thing that might look different on your screen from my screen too is that you have a little point right there, right? And it probably looks like a circle with an X through it. Mine is specified to be a little dot. Okay, so if I come up here to, do you all remember under utilities here, point style? Okay, mine is set to be a little dot, but yours is probably set like that one. Okay, and it looks like that. Okay, and that little point there is so that we can specify an on-point place to put our roof plan and then to rotate it. So let me show you how to do that. I click on attach drawing again. I click on roof plan, open. But now instead of leaving all these blank, scale is going to stay the same. I want to specify a specific place in model space, an insertion point when I xref this in. So I'm going to click yes. I'm going to check yes. Now instead of just popping this in automatically, it's going to say, where would you like to put it? And the second thing I'm going to do is I want to rotate this, roof in the view, because if it comes in and looks like that, right, my site plan is rotated, it won't look right. So I'm going to click on specify my rotation on screen, and of course no path. So this is what the dialog box will look like for this xref. Okay, so I hit OK. And now instead of just popping in that xref, right, it says, hey, where would you like to, specify the insertion point? Well, I want it to be here, click, and then I'd specify to rotate it on the screen, right? So now I'm going to just click the orientation of that line, click, and there you go. My roof plan is placed, right? Now the only thing I would really kind of worry about is that I hadn't checked what the current layer was when I xref these in. And so, okay, luckily it's layer 0, because if these had been inserted on a viewport layer or a non-printable layer, when I went to print them, they wouldn't work, right? They wouldn't show, not work, they would work, but they wouldn't print, they wouldn't be viewed, okay? Now I have all my xrefs, attached here. Everything looks really good. I've altered my LT scale so that it looks right. Now it's time for me to print this, okay? So I can come down to my layout, right? I'm gonna make sure that my page size is the right size, Control P. I know it's still new to everybody, but things we've been doing all semester. So I'm gonna change my page size. We'll do 11 by 17. I somewhat like to do this every time just so that you remember, and when you watch the video, right, you think, great, I got all these xrefs in here. Now how do I print them, right? Do they function differently? And the answer is no. You can print them like any other geometry that you've just drawn. You can dimension them like any other geometry, right? You can put text on them just like anything else. LaserJet CTB, okay. And nope, 1-to-1, center the plot, apply to layout, okay. So now I've just made my page 11 by 17. Time to create a viewport. MV, enter. Make view. Great. I'm going to create a layer that's non-printable. Okay, so I click on viewport, enter. Vport. So I just generated a layer. And to make it non-printable, I click on the little printer and slash it. That makes that layer non-printable. So I can grab my viewport, drop it onto viewport, and now that viewport won't print.
It won't let me plot. It keeps taking me to my layer.
Let's look. Oh, okay. So I don't think mine got this yet. So when you xref some objects into AutoCAD, right? AutoCAD recognizes that something has happened, right? And I think that generally it assumes we know, but it wants to remind us and say, hey, you do realize that you've brought another entity into this drawing, okay? So let me talk about that in just 1 second. So we'll deal with that. I want to just finish up this and then we'll talk about that. Okay, so we'll deal with the xrefed objects. But I want to make sure my viewport's non-printable, it's actually on the viewport layer. Then I want to scale it. Okay, so I'm going to click this. We'll change it to maybe like 1/4, which is way too big. Instead of 1/4, let's do maybe an 1/8. Better. Let's do a 1/16, right? I can just change this scale however I want it to be. Looks good. Okay. All right. So now the other thing I would actually do, and I don't know if I have one in here, so I don't think I can do it, but you all should have one. I don't have one. You could put a title block in here now, right? So you could have a title block around the outer edge. You've got your drawing here. It's to scale. Everything looks good, right? But now I go to print. And I set my drawing and I hit OK and it says, hey, wait a minute. Oh wait, I didn't get it. You'll get something that says, you have unreconciled layers. What would you like to do? Okay. You can just hit escape and not worry about them. Or let me see if I can get it. Let me see if I can get that error. It's not really an error, but okay, let's see. I'm gonna hit OK. Maybe it's because are you trying to physically print it? No. You will get this. Maybe I've set my AutoCAD to forget about doing that. No, that worked. Uh-oh. What did I print to? Well, anyway, you might get a dialog box that says you have unreconciled layers, and it will say something like, would you like to reconcile them? And if you say yes, it will pop open the layer dialog box and it will show your layers. And really all you have to do is click on the layer, right click, and choose, there's a reconcile. It should say reconcile when you do it. So click on reconcile layer. So click on it, right click, and choose reconcile, and it should reconcile it. And what that just means is that you're telling AutoCAD that you accept that something has come into this drawing and you accept it as it is, essentially, right? It's okay, we're going to print it, we're going to proceed forward, right? If you have a bunch of layers in here, you can click on the first one, hold shift, click on the last one, right click, and reconcile them all at the same time. I must have set my AutoCAD to not ask me about that anymore because I was getting so annoyed with it. You can also just say, when it says, would you like to reconcile your layers? You can say no and just go beyond it. Anyway, so I'm here, right? I could add my title block. Here I am. I'm here. I can add my title block, Control P, and I hit OK. And I'm going to save my drawing just like I would with any other drawing. Save. And it looks wonderful, right? And things that I see here, right? I've got my drawing. Ooh, I don't really like that little point. Let me get rid of that. We don't like that. So I'm going to go back to model space and I'm going to either select that little point. Ooh, I can't because it's in my xref. I'm going to go to utilities, point style, and turn it off essentially. And it goes away. Okay. All right, so that's how you're gonna bring those xrefs together, right? I showed you how to print them. One thing I just want to remind you about is how you make changes to these, right? Because for your final project, you're going to be working on drawings and you're going to be xrefing them together into a master file, and you're not going to be able to get them all done. And well, I guess you could, but it's not ideal. You want to be able to create your master file, xref your drawings together, and then continue to work on all the base files, right? Which is how the system works. I don't want to have to completely finish, then bring them together, right? And then deal with the master file. I want to be able to set this file structure up and continue to work on each of these and have them update in that master file, right? Because as you're working on a project, it continually evolves, right? So I just want to remind you that you can xref your drawings together, and then if changes are made to the base file, they update in that master file, right? So if, and I think it's kind of just not common sense, but inherent, you think, I want to get them all finished, then I want to xref them together, and then I want to print them, right? When a better process is, I want to xref everything together, right? And I want to continue to refine them and get them in the way they need to be and have them update in the individual files. Okay, so if I need to make a change to this is maybe my master file, right? I'm going to close out of it, save it. And I'm going to open up the individual base file that needs to be changed. So I open up the roof plan, click. Okay, I think in the assignment it says something like add skylights, right? So I click on, this is a circle, right? Looks really stupid, but maybe they're hippies and like circle skylights. That's who I associate circle skylights with, right? All right, so I have this is my xref roof. So I come into this file, I've added things, right? I've added all these skylights. I'm done editing, so I close it out and I save it. Yes, I'd like to save. And then I think, okay, I'm gonna open my sheet back up. Click, click. And those changes have been made in the sheet. Okay, so what happens if I wanna make changes and keep the sheet open? Can I do it at the same time, right? And the answer is yes. I can open up my roof plan, click, click. At the same time, you see I have my sheet file open, right? And I can delete these out. Delete, 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 delete. I can close it and save it, yes. And in that master file, in the sheet file, I get something that says, hey, your base file has changed, would you like to reload it? And if you click here, it will reload it. But if you accidentally hit escape or that bubble goes away, you can always come up here to roof, right click, reload, and it will reload that file. So those changes are reflected in that master file, okay? You know, it's funny because there are a few topics that I still very clearly remember learning about in school, and this was one of them. And the reason I remember it is because I felt like I was going in circles, right? Because we have 3 files we're working with essentially, right? And I was thinking, I xref all these together, but then when I want to make a change, I have to close out of one file to open a second file to change it, to then update it, you know. I felt like I had so few files that it didn't make sense to do this, right? And really, that's true. You don't really kind of see the beauty of this system until you have a lot of files that you're trying to organize, right? So when you're working with them right now, you're probably thinking it'd be easier for me just to kind of copy these together in one file and work with them all together, right? And that's true, right? We're just kind of learning the system, but really you don't see the effect of how effective this is until you have a big server with, you know, even 5 to 10 files in it. It makes a whole lot of sense, right? But here it may not make a whole lot of sense why we're doing it because the changes are just so simplistic essentially, okay? So I just want to say that you may be thinking that and it's true until you get into an office, right? But this is how the system works, okay? Now for your assignment, let me open up Canvas here. 1310.
How did you reload it if you accidentally X out of your notification?
You go to over here, you right click and you choose reload. Yep. Doesn't that work?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so for your assignment for xrefs, you are going to be taking some drawings that have already been drawn and you're going to xref them into one file. Okay, so these drawings, building details, building sections, and here's a PDF of the actual assignment. Let me, I'm gonna open up these. So there's instructions, right, obviously, but essentially what you're going to be doing is starting a blank file and you're going to be taking these and you're going to be xrefing them into a file. You're going to be laying them out, right, and printing them, and that will be your assignment. So you won't have any actual drawing to do. This assignment is about using the xref system to put these files together, okay? I've also posted an assignment, a drawing assignment, and this I think is going to help you. This next drawing assignment, you have about a week to do it. It's going to help you with your final project, right? We've done a lot of drawing exercises and I think everybody's getting to know AutoCAD really well. You know how to do blocks, you know how to do attributes. You've drawn a small bathroom, right? You've constructed a small bathroom. The final project will be a small house, a small cabin that you're gonna have to draw. And so in between the bathroom and the cabin, will be the office, essentially. So next week, I want you to draw using a blank file or your template file to start. I want you to draw this office, okay? Now, I think, let me just say this, and this goes for the xref assignment. If you see anything that asks about named views, don't worry about those, right? If it says create a named view, don't do it. Just don't worry about it. For our dimension styles, Jeff always liked this. And I have just never seen anybody do this professionally where you break the extension line on your dimensions, so don't worry about that either. But the idea behind this is that you will use the blocks that you created in the previous assignment, right? This door, double door, this furniture, the windows. You'll use all those blocks. You'll draw this office space, and you'll insert those blocks into this office space, okay? So really the thing that you're looking for here is being able to construct a floor plan using given dimensions, right? And then for your final, you'll be copying this cabin floor plan. So it'll just take this kind of a step further. Okay. Okay. Let me get your question because maybe somebody else, it's an answer to somebody else's question.
It was about the attribute homework, especially the door and window one.
Uh-huh.
From the instructions, it says we should print out in paper space the two of them. So my question is, one of them have attributes and the other one says we should explode it.
Right.
Is it on two different
Yeah.
drawing files?
No, you could do it, you could create them and then print them whole, right? And then explode them and reprint it again
Okay, so
in the same file.
basically we're just making one file,
Mm-hmm.
printing one as a block, and then exploding the same file and printing it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
All right, that was easy.
And it's all landscape, yeah.
I don't, yeah, that sounds right. I don't remember. Okay.
For you.
Yep.
On this, my LaserJet CTV has disappeared. I checked the manager to see if there's a copy in there.
Yes. Okay, so that's, yeah, the problem with working in the lab, right? Let's load our LaserJet CTV just one more time. Those of you that want to see it again. So if you go to print, right? Oh, let me open up a file. If you go to print in paper space like we should be. Okay, and your LaserJet CTB is not in here, okay? Where do we find it and how do we load it? If you go to this PC, let's go to CAD Common. CAD Common, where am I? Right there. It's right there. Yep. LaserJet CTB, right click, copy, and then go back to AutoCAD, and then go to File, Plot Style Manager, and paste it in there. So right click, paste, and then it should show up in your printer dialog box.
It's already there.
It's already there. Okay, so you have another problem. It is, there is a toggle. Hold on, let me stop this recording.